Before we get into this video, huge shout out to Carson City Motorsports for giving us the Gas EC 250. Without them, we wouldn't have had a 250 displacement in the shootout. Gas didn't have any. We normally get these bikes from the OEM. Carson City had one. They sent it out from their showroom floor. That's super cool. So looking at these bikes, basically what we're going to do is go through all the displacements and just talk about pros, cons, what we liked, what we didn't like. So looking at the next bike, it's the Husqvarna TE 150 TPI. So we moved up 25 cc's. So this bike obviously is a trail bike, it's an enduro bike, it has lights. It's going to be softer suspension. It's going to be a little bit different than, a little bit more different than the X from the Moto model. So we're going to start over here. What did you think of it?
My personal favorite bike.
Your favorite?
Yes, my personal favorite of the day. I think I rode it 3 times. And other bikes I rode twice, so that was my personal favorite of the day. It was, you could tell it was a little bit more power. You mean that 150 had a little bit more, but where on the 125 you really had to use the clutch, I felt like you could kind of chug the 150 a little bit. You didn't have to be so focused on staying on the clutch, keeping it up in the RPMs. I don't know who found it, but there was like a line through the rock wash, and I just felt like I could literally bunny hop it like a bicycle, just like with the throttle, just pop, 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 and work my way through there, pick and choose where I wanted to go. It was stable everywhere, whether we were going downhill through the terrain or on the single track. I just felt like I was having the power that I needed, but also not having to work that extra little bit that I was on the 125. I enjoyed it. I didn't find myself shifting up and down a lot. Like on the big hill climb, I just stuck it in third and just let it chug all the way up the hill. Yes, it was kind of winding out, but it just continued to pull, and I just didn't feel like I was overworking myself. Like I just felt like I could ride that bike for hours. Like if I was going to like a hard enduro, something like that, where I just really wanted to be efficient the whole time, that would be a bike for me.
What was really interesting to me is you go up to 25 cc's, but I think one thing to really talk about here is the difference between how a two-stroke enduro and a cross-country bike are in engine character. Because I feel like regardless of what brand we're talking about, is the 125 to 150, yeah, you're going to have a little more mid-range on the 150, but again, this being more of an enduro model, the way, whether we're talking about the ignition, the pipe, the cylinder setup, this one chugs so much more than the 125. I was mind blown back to what we kind of ended the 125 on, the ability to creep through rocks, like where the 125, like you said, being you have to hold it on and clutch. The 150, like I could ride it like the bigger bikes. I could just stick in a high gear and roll on the throttle and creep over stuff. And it actually would chug like the YZ, like the standard 125. It does, yes, you can keep it under the pipe, but unless it's flat ground, it struggles to move itself if it's under the pipe. For the Husky, even on the hill climb, like if it drops below the pipe, yeah, you can feel the bike starting to go down to its knees, but it'll still move and chug along. Like you can do that in some hills. It's more forgiving. It's overall more forgiving everywhere. So for somebody, I feel like, kind of again, we said like a younger kid, a lighter rider, girl, somebody maybe, wants the really light bike like the 125, but really needs the forgiving character, maybe just doesn't have the riding experience to match with it. This was definitely, to me, a lot better option for fun factor on the trails. Just being able to get through the day without getting frustrated or irritated when you're getting stuck on it constantly, just because it is so much easier to ride when you're making mistakes or you just maybe aren't, perfect with your clutch control and your throttle control. It doesn't pull nearly as well up top as 125. I felt like it reacted well to short shifting. Like it will ring out, but you kind of feel it fall on its face a little more. It's just really way more forgiving than the other bike. Not as fun. I do enjoy the 125 character more when everything's going right. The 150 doesn't put as big of a smile on my face, but those couple situations where I would be stuck on the 125 kicking myself in the butt for making a mistake, the 150 I would just continue to move on.
Yeah, for me, I was actually really looking forward to riding this bike because I think it was a couple years ago I rode this bike for like an individual test by itself, and I absolutely loved it once I wrapped my head around how to ride it. And that's really like, there's very little torque, and you do have, compared to the 125, it's a little bit more, but the bigger displacement bikes, it's just not there. But it's almost a bike that I would love to ride, not race. for me. I would love to go explore, like Jacob was saying, like through literally like creek beds, like where there's no trail, you're just bushwhacking, you're just kind of like scrambling around to see where you can go. This is a great bike for that. But if it's like, you know, if you're trying to set lap times or trail times or race, that's kind of when I'm like, I'd probably pick one of the bigger bikes, just because like it would just take more work and effort to get this bike to work fast and to ride fast for me. Similar to the 125, you know, handling wise, it still feels light. You do have the bigger tank and a few more extras. Like you said, is having a smaller rider, you know, someone that's maybe getting into extreme enduro, like you want to try some gnarly terrain, and this can really help with like kind of baby stepping into that, because the 300s, they're going to have a lot more power and be able to get you up something with less effort, but you can get out of sorts like immediately and be like intimidated by it. So I think the intimidation factor is super low with this.
So for me, this was the first bike I'd ever ridden that was TPI. As much as I love to ride off-road, I just don't get the opportunity that often. So these 2 days, was the first time I was introduced to that. And I think I expected it to be a little bit cleaner, if I'm being really honest. But this one in particular had like a kind of a hesitation, almost like it was rich. And we did reach out to Husky about, is there any adjustments we can make to this out here? It's not like an air screw or jetting. I don't know a thing about TPI or how to correct air fuel mixture. And no, you can't was the answer we got. So we just dealt with it. And it's not, you know, it's not awful, but I expect it to be a little sharper throttle response. Even if the power was down, I thought that would be the outcome, like it is on a 4-stroke. Less hesitation and just real clean and crisp. And it wasn't quite that way. So there's that. The thing that impressed me about this bike was how slow you could go. Like in first gear, just idling, like putting along, someone could walk past you. I mean, this thing is barely moving, which is great if you ride really tight trails. So for me, I thought if I was back east somewhere in the woods and I'm riding really tight single track, maybe it's technical little rocky sections or whatever, great bike, because it chugs really well, like these guys were saying. You can either in second or third still kind of just be cruising along and it's still there to get you over stuff. But if you really need to slow down and chug something, this was one of the best. I mean, it goes so slow in first gear, but it won't stall. It just kind of keeps chugging along. So that was something really good that I took away from it. And I was able to push it pretty hard. Kind of like, I think you and I both pushed it, you know, a time or two on some hot laps, and like it'll go. And you do feel a little bit more power than the Yamaha, but way less weight and mass than the bigger bikes. So it's got that sweet spot. And I think for somebody getting into off-road, kind of maybe just learning to ride, this is a really good bike because it's very easy to ride, electric start. So just a very simple bike and light and all of the things that you're looking for if you're just getting started. So to me, that was sort of the sweet spot for that thing.
This is actually a bike that going into it, I like the look of it. You know, it was all black and white. It looked really cool. And I thought I was going to like it more, but I tend to have found myself always in that hesitation spot of the motor, like of it just not being clean and crisp as I was hoping it was going to be, and I thought it was going to be. I did like it on the downhill sections. Like I said, it's easy to flick around. I almost wish it had a map switch where you can have a mellow and then have it maybe a little bit livelier. But through a lot of the stuff, I just felt like the first half of day one, I was able to like clear it out and get into the power, and it felt good. But then as you're going through the corners, like it just has that, not boggy, but just sputtering kind of. Yeah, and then you would drop below that, and then it would be torquing. You're like, all right, like I can work with this. And then it would get back into that gurgly midsection and then clear up again. And I just feel like both days I was spent all my time in that area.
Something that Ping mentioned that really came to my mind is you were talking about how slow you literally can go, and something I think that makes it so appealing to me is if you're in rock section, like, well, the one single track we're in that had just a lot of rocks in there and stuff. Like if you're on one of the bigger bikes, even if you kind of have to stop and get moving again, those things still make so much power sometimes. Like once you get up and going, you kind of have to commit. But if you're a really entry level or new to the style of riding, if you're kind of intimidated and you want to just like move a little bit, stop and pick out your lines a little more, that's thing with that, you can just like creep over and paddle your feet and kind of, okay, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here. Where the bigger bikes, they'll kind of like leap up a lot of stuff, which if you're experienced, that's great. You'll get back up on the pegs and start bouncing through stuff and get moving. But again, if you're just not used to and you don't process as quick, this is kind of really good for that. And again, it really leans itself towards somebody that's really maybe new to this style, that style of riding, that real tight technical off-road.
All right, that's our two-stroke off-road comparison. If you're on YouTube, click like and subscribe. If you're on vitalmx.com, check out our YouTube channel and leave a comment down below what is your favorite two-stroke and what maybe off-road displacement you want to see next us compare, and do a little shootout with those. So thanks for watching. Catch you next time.